Airtable is an amazingly versatile tool for organizing and automating your data, but it's not limited to just basic spreadsheets. With Airtable, you can build nearly any system that you want. And if you're not satisfied with the off the shelf task management apps like Monday.com or Asana, then you may want to build your own in Airtable. Today, I'm going to show you how to start tracking tasks and projects with a simple Airtable base. Hi, I'm Tom from XRay.tech, the workflow company. At XRay.tech, we use Airtable to build and manage automated systems for task management, client onboarding, invoicing, and a whole lot more. If you'd like to see more tips and tutorials for workflow automation every week, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and turn on those notifications too. In this video, I'll walk you through setting up an Airtable base for task management step by step. Then, I'll show you some helpful data views that you can add to your task management base to track your team's progress. Next, we'll take a look at building interfaces that your team can use to add new tasks and update their status without needing to edit the database itself. Finally, I'll demonstrate a simple automation that you can add to your base to create automatic alerts for urgent, incomplete tasks. Let's get started. First, let's take a quick look at the finished base. After a brief overview, we'll walk through each component in more detail so you can set it up for yourself. Note that the base that I'm going to show you today is just an example of the kind of setup you might use for tracking tasks in Airtable. Ideally, it should be a great starting point, but I'd encourage you to customize the fields, views, and interfaces to match you and your team's preferences. One of the key advantages of using Airtable for task management instead of an out-of-the-box solution like Asana or Monday is that you have precise control over the format of your interface as well as any workflow optimizations you want to include. You can make the system you want to use instead of being stuck with someone else's design. With this video, I just want to give you a solid jumping off point and show you some of the key options you have for customizing your base. Additionally, if you're not familiar with basic Airtable functionality like creating or modifying fields, then you should check out our Airtable Beginner's Guide before viewing this video. With all that in mind, let's go through the base I've set up here. In the grid view of our tasks table, we can see all of the fields in every task that we've created. As you can see, every key piece of information is covered here. Task summary, project, due date, and other attributes like that. This project field is actually a linked record, which refers to our projects table in the same base. Now let's jump back to the tasks table. On the left, we see a few different views. Every view is based on the same data, but each one has different filters and sorts to make the most relevant information easily visible. This grid view has all of the information we need for our tasks, but it's a lot of data to look at once. To make it a little easier to get some key takeaways at a glance, we've added a few custom views here. This timeline view gives us a high-level overview of our team's progress, and this urgent tasks view lets us see any outstanding to-dos approaching their due date. This data view is where you can manage your entire tasks database, but it's probably not what you want to share with your whole team. Instead, I'll show you how to create a simple interface where your team can add new tasks with a form and update each task's status on a Kanban board. To start automating these task management workflows, I've configured a quick automation that just sends an email alert whenever a task enters the urgent tasks view that I highlighted earlier. I'll also show you how to configure that automation. If you'd like to copy this entire finished base, just check out the XRay Workflow resources board in the description of this video. We've saved a shareable link to this base there for easy reference. If you'd prefer to build the base yourself and customize as you go, you can follow along as we break this base down step by step. Create a new base or copy our base to your workspace using the link in the resources board. In the tasks table, I've added several fields that will be useful for creating and managing tasks. This first field is the primary field. This is a formula field that creates a name for each task by combining the contents of a couple of other fields. I'll explain why in a minute. Let's go over the other fields first. Here, we have a task summary field. This is a single line text field where we'll give a short description of the task in question. Next, we've got an assignee field, which uses the user field type. With the user field type, we can assign each task directly to an Airtable user on our team. This will be very important for our automation demo at the end of this tutorial. Next, we have a couple of date fields for start and end date. We'll need both of these to create a timeline view. always be sure to use specific field types like this instead of text whenever possible. It will make filtering and sorting your data much easier. To see whether the task is done or not, we've got this status field. The choices are to do, in progress, done, and archived. Next, we have a similar single select field for priority. We're using high, medium, and low as the options. This client field is also single select, but we haven't pre-configured any options. Instead, we can just add options as needed whenever we start working with a new client. To provide some extra detail, there's a note field as well, which is set to long text, rich text formatting enabled. Then we have an attachment field to add any relevant files. Finally, there's the project field and the associated project due date field. Project is a linked record, which links to the other table in our base, aptly named projects. And project due date is a lookup field which retrieves the project due date from the linked record. Now let's revisit that primary field. In any Airtable base, the primary field acts as the title or label for every record. You can use any field type you'd like, but at XRay, we always prefer to generate the primary field's contents with a formula. Typically, we'll just use a simple concatenate function that combines the text of a name or title or summary field with another piece of important data, like the due date in this case. We've also added a date format function to set an easily readable format for the date, and a simple if statement that ensures the field displays some help text when either dependent field is empty, rather than just showing an error message. By using a formula field, we can ensure that every single task uses the exact same format for its label. We won't have some tasks start with a date and other tasks start with a summary, and we won't see any other inconsistencies from human error when people start creating tasks. Plus, if we ever want to change this primary field, we can just update the formula once, and all of the records will instantly use the new format. Ultimately, it's your choice, but I'd really recommend using formulas as your primary field whenever you're building a new base. So that's our basic table setup. Next, we can add some additional views to get more utility out of our task management base. In Airtable, every table can include several different customized views. Views let you arrange the same data in different ways. The default grid view that every table starts with is useful for seeing all of your records and for managing all of your fields in a familiar spreadsheet format. If you want to add or edit fields, you probably want to do that in a grid view like this, that displays all of your table's records. We've titled it View All Tasks. But many of the other available view types are often better suited to quickly surfacing important data and helping people get work done. Views can also be extremely useful for managing automations, since you can trigger automations in Airtable, Zapier, or Make whenever a new record enters a specific view. To create a new view, just click on the view type you want to use from this menu in the bottom left. First, I'll create a new grid view that only displays urgent tasks. To do that, I'll click on Filter here at the top and configure 3 conditions, so the view only displays tasks with a high priority, a due date within the next 3 days, and any status other than done or archived. This lets us see urgent and incomplete work at a glance and will be the basis for the automation we'll build later on. Next, let's take a quick look at a timeline view. A timeline view will create a timeline with your records. For this to work, you'll need to have 2 dates that you can use as a start and an end date. Once the timeline view is set up, you can see all of your tasks on a timeline. Timeline views are a great way to get a bird's eye view of your tasks and see how your progress is stacking up against your timeline. However, timeline views do require a pro account, which currently costs $20 per seat per month. The views that we covered here are a great starting point, but they're just a sample of the views that Airtable offers. You can check out our Airtable Beginner's Guide for more info, or just add views to your table and try them out for yourself. There are tons of options that can completely transform the way that you view and edit your data. With all these fields and views set up, you're almost ready to start using your task management base with your team. There are 2 main ways that you can share this base with your team. You can either invite them as collaborators on this base directly, or you can create an interface for everyone to use. To allow team members to access and edit your base directly, click on the Share button on the top right of the screen. Invite everyone on your team that you want to include in your task management system, but just make sure they're a part of your organization in Airtable. For each person or group that you invite, you can set a unique permission level: creator, editor, commenter, or read only. A creator has full edit access to the base. An editor can create or edit new records and views, but cannot edit the base's fields. A commenter can, big surprise, only comment, and a read-only user can't edit the base or records at all. For this task management system, you may want to make some of your team editors. That way, they'll be able to add and update tasks, but they won't be able to add or delete fields. However, there is another way to let users access your base, which can help keep things much simpler for your team: interfaces. With interfaces, you can create simple layouts that allow your team to view selected data and edit specific records or fields without accessing the entire base. That way, your team can see the limited, relevant fields that they need access to without feeling overwhelmed by the detailed data views that they don't really need to see. You also don't need to worry about them editing your table's configuration or going through the tedium of adding permissions to every single field in your data. Interface users also won't count as collaborators in your Airtable subscription, so it could be a great way to save some money. We'll create an interface with two useful pages: a form view where our team can create tasks, and a Kanban board where they can view tasks sorted by status and update a few key fields. This might seem like a bit of an unconventional approach, but there's a reason we want to employ this setup. One of the biggest challenges in using a task management system with your team is making sure that everyone uses the system consistently and correctly. Giving them a massive database with a ton of customized views will often just be confusing. And if you just grant your team access to the database directly, they may often accidentally create incomplete tasks, missing key data fields like a due date. Instead, by using the streamlined pages in this interface, your team can quickly accomplish what they need to do. And by using a form view, we can ensure that every new task has all of the required fields filled in. And if you'd like to use a different approach, you can customize your drag and drop interface however you'd like. To get started, just click on Interfaces at the top of your base. Click on Start Building to create a new interface. Give your interface a name. We'll call ours Task Management Portal. Then choose a layout. You'll see several different choices that are pretty much identical to the views that you can see in the Data tab, but there are a few others that are unique to interfaces, like Dashboard and Record Review. You'll also see Blank as an option down at the bottom. If you choose Blank, you can add any view option you'd like to your page. You'll also be able to add additional elements to the page. So, for instance, you could customize your blank page to include both a Kanban view element and a grid view element. If you just choose a pre-made configuration like Kanban, you either won't be able to add any additional elements at all, or you'll only be able to add limited elements like a text field. It's a little unintuitive, but we expect this functionality to change and be more consistent across different page types pretty soon. To start, we'll choose a pre-configured Kanban view to keep things simple. Then, we need to click Next. Now, we'll pick the table we want to get data from, and the stacking field we want to sort by. In this case, we'll sort by status. Now we can click Finish. Airtable has created a new interface with a single page for our Kanban layout. We can configure this page in the menu on the right. Here, we can change the view into a different layout, add filters, or even modify permissions. You can even click on a record to set permission for each individual field. From there, you can make each field view-only or editable. Note that every field in an interface page will default to view-only. In our example, we'll change the status, assignee, summary, due date, and attachment fields to editable. We'll leave everything else as read-only. There's an option to allow users to add records too, but we'll leave that disabled. We want to encourage a single method for creating tasks, and that method will be the form that we'll create next. We'll also keep Edit Inline disabled. Unfortunately, that will disable editing status by dragging and dropping the Kanban cards, but enabling it would allow users to create records here, which is something we don't want. Once your page is all set, click on Publish on the top right to commit your changes and create a shareable interface. To share the interface with your team, click on Share, then invite users by email or with a link. With either option, you can set your invited users to editor, commenter, or read only. I'll create an invite link set to editor. So anyone I share this link with can access the interface and edit the fields that I've specifically configured to be editable. Note that you can also restrict access to users with an email address with a specific domain. Now, I'll copy this link and open it up while signed in to another account. I can view every task that's already been created, and I can click on any of them and edit the fields I've selected earlier. There's no way to create new tasks on this page, just as we intended. To give our users a way to add new tasks, let's go back to the interface and add a form. I've opened up the interface on my own account again. To edit the published interface, click on the interface's name at the top of the left-hand panel and select Edit. Alternatively, you can use the keyboard shortcut Option 1 on a Mac or Alt 1 on Windows to return to the editing view. Now, we'll need to add another page to contain our form view. We can do that in the right-hand panel by clicking on Add Page. If you don't see Add Page, just click on All Pages first. We'll choose Form as the view type. Then, we click Next to choose the table we want to use. On this screen, you can select all the fields you want to include in the form, just uncheck any fields to leave it out of the form. Once you've made all your selections, click Next, give the form a name, and click Finish. Now, our interface has two pages, one with the Kanban view and one with the form view. You can reorder your pages in the panel on the right. Once your form is all set, click on Publish to commit your changes. Once again, I'll open up the same sharing link from before with another account. I'll submit a task in the form. Then, when I open up the Kanban page, I can see it right here. And when I open up the task itself, I can edit all of the specified fields. Now, with this interface, your team has two clearly defined pages to use, one for adding new tasks and one for editing tasks. If you'd prefer to let your team add and edit tasks in a more conventional layout, you can always add a list or a grid view element to a blank page. Then, enable the Edit Records in Line and Add Records settings. However, by splitting the actions of adding tasks and editing tasks, you can ensure that everyone creates complete tasks with the form and only edits the data you want them to be able to edit. Ultimately, it's up to you. Again, one of the main benefits of using Airtable for task management is that you can use any format you'd like, whether it's a Kanban, form, a list, a timeline, or something else. You can also add filters to any view in an interface to create views that are specific to each department or specific to each project. This base is just a starting point, and everything can be customized to your liking. Try out a few different views and settings and see what works best for you. Finally, to wrap up our task management base, let's take a quick look at enhancing your task management system with no-code automation. Airtable is an ideal app to use as an operational database for your automations. You can build useful automations with Airtable's native automation builder, or you can use third-party providers like Zapier and Make to integrate Airtable into thousands of other apps. The possibilities with Airtable automation are endless, so I won't be able to give you a comprehensive guide to everything that you can automate. Instead, I'm just going to give you a quick example to show you how you can start building automations in your task management base. In our example, we're going to build an automation that sends an email alert to the assignee of any incomplete or urgent task. As I noted before, this automation will only work if you're using the user field type for assignee. That's how we get the user's email address. Alternatively, you could use a linked record if you want to set up an additional team table and include each user's email address in that table. You could also include other contact info there, like a Slack ID. However, using the user field type will be much faster for this example. To create a new automation, click on the Automations tab at the top. Then, click on Create Automation on the bottom left. Choose a trigger. Whenever your trigger event occurs, your automation will run. I'll choose When a record enters a view, so that the automation will only run whenever a record enters the Urgent Tasks view that we created earlier, Just as a reminder, that view has a filter that checks for the tasks that are incomplete, high priority, and due within 3 days. You can see all the different ways that you can trigger an automation in this video that we did earlier. Now, I'll need to identify the table and view that I want to use for this automation. Next, I'll test the trigger by choosing a record. The test was successful, so now I can add an automated action. I'll click on Add Advanced Logic or Action and choose the Send Email action. Now, to populate the To field, we'll use the Assignee field from our table. To use dynamic data from your Airtable base in an automation, click on the blue plus sign in the field you're configuring. In the window that pops up, we can see that we're using data retrieved by the automation's trigger, so we have access to every field that's a part of that record. We'll select Assignee. Since Assignee is a user field, it has several pieces of data: ID, email, name, and profile picture. In this case, we want email, so we'll click on that. Now, our automation is set to send an email to whoever the assignee is on the task that enters the urgent tasks view. Next, we'll add a generic subject line to the email. Reminder, task name is due soon. And I'll use some dynamic data to insert the actual task's name. Then, we can fill out the email body with more static and dynamic data. I'll copy and paste this message I prepared earlier, and I'll add some more dynamic data here. I'll insert the name from the assignee field to personalize the message, and I'll add a title and a link directly to the task for easy reference. To test this step, we'll start by generating a preview. This will show us what the finished message will look like, but won't actually send the email. The message looks good, so now I'll click on Test Automation. Then I'll select a record and click on Run Automation. When I check my inbox, I see a new email from Airtable Automations, complete with the message I configured. Finally, I'll give the automation a descriptive name and turn it on, so it will run whenever a task enters the Urgent Tasks view. We'll also copy the automation's URL and add it to the description of the Urgent Tasks view so everyone can see that there's an associated automation. Again, this is just an example of the sort of automation you could build with your tasks. You could configure additional alerts for any newly created task. You could also configure automations to create specific onboarding tasks whenever a new deal is marked as closed won in your CRM of choice. You could even set up an automation to create a task by simply responding to a message in Slack with a custom emoji. We've built a Slack task maker in our team at XRay that we use every day to quickly create tasks right alongside our key conversations. Every channel is mapped to a project, and every team member has their own emoji. Note that the specific apps used in this automation could always be changed. For instance, you could swap out Slack for Microsoft Teams or any other messaging software. If you're interested in building a Slack task maker automation for your team, just reach out to XRay for a free consultation and we'll explore your options. Airtable is an excellent tool for no-code builders. Using Airtable's customizable fields, views, interfaces, and automations, you can create any system you'd like for managing your tasks and projects. Copy our base or build your own to start today. If you've enjoyed this video, prove you're human, like and subscribe for more automation tips every single week. If you'd like to learn more about no-code and low-code automation, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. You can find all of our content on our website at xray.tech. You can find all of those links in the resources board down below, and as always, don't forget, keep the flow. Trying to future-proof yourself? Start designing the way your team works with no-code tools, automation, and AI. In XRay's Workflow Designer course, we'll show you how to break down every part of a process to find the best opportunities for automation, and how to integrate those automations into your team's daily work. You'll learn how to create time for your entire team, get more reliable results, and give everyone a newfound clarity and confidence in their work. Just go to this URL to learn more. The entire package includes over 2 hours of premium video content, challenging example projects, and tons of helpful resources. The course costs just $250 and gives you lifetime access to a Slack community of workflow designers building systems in dozens of different industries. Space is limited, so join the free waiting list today to get notified as soon as the course is live later this year. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you soon in our Workflow Designer course.